Hey there everyone, welcome back. Today I have 5 brand new Dollar Tree Halloween DIYs for you guys. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Jessica. If you like home decor and DIYs on a budget, make sure to stick around by hitting the subscribe button and ringing the notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. Okay, now let's get into the DIYs today. For this first DIY, I'm using 2 of these coffin signs from Dollar Tree. They are reversible. One side says welcome and one side says trick or treat. I'm also going to be using a piece of white foam board from Dollar Tree. I ended up painting it black, so you could use black foam board from Dollar Tree if you wanted to. Then I'm going to take one of the coffins and I'm going to trace out one of the sides, and I am going to make it probably about 2 inches high. So it just depends on how high you want your sides of your coffin to be, because that's what the foam board is going to be, is the sides of the coffin. So I just cut that piece out with my X-Acto knife, and then I used it to trace another side, and I cut that side out with the X-Acto knife as well. So I have 2 sides for my coffin. And then for the top and the bottom sides of the coffin, I just used that piece of foam board to trace out the width of that, and then use the coffin to trace out the bottom and the top of the foam board, and then cut those out with my X-Acto knife as well. All right, now that I have all 4 sides cut out, I'm going to go ahead and attach them to one of the coffins. It doesn't matter what size, because again, I'm going to be painting this. So I just started off with the top piece, and I'm just hot gluing the foam board down to the coffin. You could use super glue, E6000, whatever your preference is, but hot glue seems to work okay for the foam board and the wood from Dollar Tree, or the fake wood from Dollar Tree. And then for the side pieces, I cut the pieces at the angle, so that way it would be easier to attach because you don't need that angle. And then I just hot glued the one piece down, and then hot glued the longer piece down, and then hot glued those pieces together. And then I'm just going to do the same thing for the bottom and the other side for my coffin. And then I just used a little bit of extra hot glue around the inside just to reinforce everything, so that way it gave it a little bit of a stronger hold. Now that everything is put together, I'm going to take some black spray paint and I'm going to spray paint the whole thing. Once that's dry, I'm going to take some battery operated LED purple lights from Dollar Tree that you can get in the Halloween section, and I just hot glued the battery pack to the bottom side of the coffin, and then I'm going to feed those lights through the little hole in the coffin sign where the hanger goes. And that way the lights will be inside of the coffin and you won't be able to see the wires. Now this little coffin is perfect size for one of the skeletons from Dollar Tree. So I picked one of those up and he's gonna go inside the coffin, but I wanted his eyes to glow. So I'm gonna use those LED lights and I'm gonna put them through his head to come out his eyes. So I used my hot glue gun to start off with by using the heat to poke eye holes through, and then also 2 holes in the back of his head. But unfortunately that wasn't big enough because I couldn't get the LED lights through his head to the eyes to poke out. Like, it was just too difficult. So I ended up cutting a hole in the back of his head that was big enough for me to stick my thumb and my index finger through, so that way I could push that light through his eyeball and the light would just stick out enough, if that makes sense. I did use a pair of tweezers, so that way it would help me kind of pull the light out once I pushed it far enough in the eye. And This skeleton, his head is flexible, so if you bend it a little bit, you can kind of push it back into shape. And I was able to get both LED lights through his eyeballs. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my skeleton on one of the sides of my coffin. And I also put the lights up against one of the sides so that way it would glow more. And his head is going to stick out, and his arm and one of his legs. And then I'm going to take the other coffin sign and I'm going to lay that on top of the coffin and hot glue the one side down. I chose to have the welcome side facing out, but you could have the trick or treat side. It's up to you. And then I just hot glued his hand and his foot to the front of the coffin, so that way he looks like he's peeking out. And then to cover up the hole in the top of the sign, I used this skeleton spider, and that was it for some spooky decor. For this next DIY, I'm using one of these thankful buffalo checked signs from Dollar Tree, and I am going to go ahead and paint the top thankful part with some white acrylic paint because I don't want that to show. Then I'm going to use 3 of these wooden ghosts. They do come on their own base, but one of my bases broke off, so I ended up just pulling off the other 2 bases, and then I just used some sandpaper to smooth them out. Now I'm going to take some of that white acrylic paint and I'm going to paint both sides of my ghost. I did have to use probably about 3 coats to make it look really white because for some reason this acrylic paint from Dollar Tree just does not cover very well, but it worked out. I just had to use a few more coats. Once everything was dry, I'm going to take my sign and flip it over, and I'm going to attach my ghost to the buffalo checked side. So I just used hot glue and I hot glued it down, and then I had the ghost's little hands, I guess, overlapping the middle ghost and hot glued those down to each other. Then I took some wooden letters to spell out boo and I painted those with some black paint, both the back and the front. I also painted some wooden beads. I painted 2 black, 4 orange, and 2 white. I got these wooden beads off of Amazon. I'll leave the link down below in the description box. Once everything was dry, I took a piece of twine and measured that out, the length from each ghost's last arm, and then I'm going to go ahead and string my wooden beads onto my string. I put 2 of the orange beads in between the B and the O, and then another one in between the 2 O's, and then I hot glued my letters to the top of my twine, or the top of the letters to the twine, and then I just alternated the rest of the colors on each side of the word with the white, orange, and black. And then I hot glued my twine to the hands of my ghost on the back there, like you see. And that was it for this simple little DIY. You can put candles on the back of this and have it glow. It's really cute for Halloween. For this next DIY, I'm going to be making a crystal ball. I'm going to be using these skeleton hands I spray painted with some gold spray paint, and then a pillar that I got from Dollar Tree that I'm spray painting also with gold spray paint. And then for the crystal ball itself, I'm using one of the glass bowl candle holders from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use this sea glass spray paint in a rose color to lightly spray the inside of my glass bowl bowl. And then once everything is dry, I'm ready to put it all together. So I'm going to be using some LED purple lights from Dollar Tree as well, but I don't want the black wire to show through my glass. So I'm using some stuffing from an old pillow to just conceal the wires, so that way the lights show through, but you can't see the wires once it's inside the glass. So I'm just going to place all of that inside of the glass and then place the glass upside down on top of my pillar. And I'm going to hot glue that around so it doesn't fall off, because it just fits on top of there. I would definitely use E6000 or some super glue for a stronger hold. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my skeleton hands to the side of my glass bowl. So I just lined it up the way I liked it, and then I used again a little bit of hot glue on some of the fingers to hold it to the glass bowl, and then a little bit of hot glue to the bottom of the wrist to hold it against the pillar. Again, super glue or E6000 would work so much better to hold everything together. And then for the battery pack, I just hot glued that to the back of the pillar. The width of the pillar and the battery pack are perfect, so it conceals it. And that was it for this spooky crystal ball. This DIY is super simple. It's a $1 DIY. I'm just going to use 4 of these photo frames from Dollar Tree, and then I printed out these skull heads from canva.com. I will leave the free printable link down below in the description box. Just printed them out on regular white printer paper. And I'm just going to simply place each one of them in each one of the frames. And that's it for this DIY. Like I said, it's super simple. I got the photo frames with the little white piece of mat. And then also it has the little foam pieces on the mat. So it kind of gives the picture an elevated look, which is nice. And you could also print these off on a little bit better of paper, but it's just a high-end look for only $1. I love how these turned out. For this last DIY, I'm going to be making a witchy candy bowl with one of these candy bowls from Dollar Tree. I went ahead and spray painted just the outside of it black, and then I left the inside just plain orange. Now I'm going to be using 2 rolls of this tulle from Dollar Tree. This one says it's glow in the dark and sparkly, but they do have other types there, so you can use whatever color you wanted to, or whatever type you wanted to. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to hot glue the tulle to the top around the bowl, and I'm just going to pinch it as I hot glue to pleat it, so that way this is going to look kind of like the witch's skirt. So I just pinched it, and then I hot glued it, and then just kept working my way around the bowl as I went. It did take 2 rolls of this tulle, but just barely. I almost got away with just 1, but I just needed a little bit more from the other roll. So I went ahead and just started where I left off at and continued to hot glue. And then once I got to the beginning where I started, I just cut my tulle off and then hot glued it down. Now on the top there, you can see some hot glue through the tulle. So I took some of this nautical rope from Dollar Tree and I just hot glued it around the top there, just so that way it would clean it up and look nice, and you wouldn't be able to see the hot glue. And it didn't take a full thing of rope. It just took about half of it to go around the bowl. Now that the bowl part is done, I'm going to go ahead and work on the legs that are going to be hanging from the bowl. And don't pay attention to this here. I'm actually only going to be using one set of these witches legs from Dollar Tree. The other set, I had a different idea, so just ignore the second set. Just use one set of the witch's legs from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to take a seam ripper and I'm just going to pull out the thread for the shoes and then also the thread at the top of the hanger there, so that way I'm left with one long piece. And then I'm going to fold it over and cut it into two so that way I can have two legs. Then I just used a little bit of hot glue at the bottom to secure the bottom down, and then at the top I left open because I'm going to go ahead and stuff it just with some old stuffing that I had from a pillow, and I am going to just stuff it in there. It helped to use a skewer to push it all the way down to the end, and then you just kind of push on it and fluff it a little bit so that way it breaks up the stuffing once it's in there so it doesn't look so disjointed. I didn't stuff the legs all the way to the top. I left about 1 to 1.5 inches of fabric at the top that didn't have stuffing in it, and you'll see why later. And then I did go ahead and hot glue the top of the legs together after I got them all stuffed. And also, when you're starting out putting the stuffing in the legs in the beginning, there is a seam to keep the legs together. When you open that leg up to put the stuffing in, the seam will come apart a little bit, but if you put a little bit of hot glue on the seam and let it dry, then you won't have a problem finishing stuffing the legs. Once the legs were both stuffed, I just hot glued the feet to each one of the legs, and here that's kind of where I was playing around with both of the feet from the other set because I thought maybe I would stuff them, but I didn't end up doing that. So I just hot glued the feet down. Now to attach my legs to my candy bowl, I'm going to use an X-Acto knife and carefully make 2 slits on each side of the inside of the bowl where the crease is. And you want to be really careful with the X-Acto knife. You just want to make 2 small slits big enough to pull that piece of fabric on each one of those legs at the top there where you did not stuff through that bowl, and then you just fold the piece of fabric over and use a little bit of hot glue to secure it down. And that is it. This candy bowl turned out so cute. It's perfect to hold candy for Halloween. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you loved these Spooktacular Halloween DIYs. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.